Global Demography members: Lizelle Fuertes, Chulubi Brazilote, Mian Alcantara, Mariali Dapat, Marvin Gualiza, Mary Diane Cabellada. So what is demography? Demography refers to the scientific study of the size, composition, distribution, and changes in human population. Demographic studies describe the composition of a population by its distribution of population categories such as race, age, marital status, gender, socioeconomic status, and religion. The demographic transition theory is a widespread description of the changing pattern of mortality, fertility, and growth rates as societies move from one demographic regime to another. The term was first instituted by the American demographer Frank W. Notestein during the 20th century. So, demography, it is the scientific study of human populations, and it is important to understand the structure of a population in order to plan health and public health interventions. So, examples of demography includes age, gender, ethnicity, fertility rates, and etc. Before the demographic transition. In the pre-industrial, there was a slow growth of population due to wages, causing fertility to fall and mortality to rise due to famine, war, or disease. Therefore, population size in equilibrium with a slowly growing economy. Before 1800, in Western Europe centuries, marriage required the resources to establish and maintain a separate household. So age at first marriage for women was late, averaging around 25 years, as a substantial share of women never married. Its total fertility rate was moderate for a married woman at 4 to 5 births. The life expectancy at birth was moderately between 25 and 35. Infancy and childhood mortality in influencing early 1700, Western Europe population growth rates were 0.3% per year, population growth rates and rises above 1% in 1900. China may have been closer to the European experience, Li and Feng, in 1999. In Canada and the United States, population grew because of much earlier marriage due to land mass but decelerated in 1900. In India, life expectancy is in the low 20s, while fertility was 6 or 7 births per woman. Similarly, in Taiwan around 1900. So before the demographic transition, the population growth, which equals the difference between the birth and death rate in the absence of migration, is near zero. The demographic transition has enabled economies to convert a larger portion of the gains from factor accumulation and technological progress into growth of income per capita. It enhanced labor productivity and the growth process. Mortality declines. In Northwest Europe, mortality began to decline in 1800 before the Second World War. Mortality rates decreased and rose again after it. The first stage of mortality declines due to reductions in contagious and infectious diseases. In Europe, smallpox vaccine developed in the late 18th century, health preventive measures of 1900 and increases in income lead to improved nutrition and hygiene that decreases its mortality rates. Famine mortality stagnated by the development of the storage and transportation of regional and international food markets. Likewise, reductions in chronic and degenerative diseases like heart disease and cancer reduces mortality. The high-income countries generally accomplish a mortality decrease. They freely composed and supported biomedical examination, human genome task, and undifferentiated cell research for future additions. Some low-income countries, mortality progress was accomplished at some point in the 20th century. The future in India rose from 24 out of 1920 to 62 years today and increased 48 years for every scheduled year more than 80 years. In China, rose from 41 out of 1950 to 1955 to 70 out of 1955 to 1999, an addition of 65 years out of each year, more than 45 years. So in mortality declines, according to demographic transition theory, declines in mortality and other aspects of socio-economic change are predicted to increase pressures on families and married couples, to lower their desired number of children, and to increase their demand for family and planning. There is also factors affecting and causes decline in mortality. First is disease control medicines, public health programs, and medical facilities. Fertility transition. Between 1890 and 1920s, marital fertility began to decline in most European provinces, with a median decline of about 40% from 1870 to 1930. Although most couple wishes to raise their children, the mortality and fertility interact in complicated ways. For example, increased survival raises the return of post-birth investments in children. Some of the improvement in child survival is itself a response to parental decision to invest more in the health and welfare of a smaller number of children. This economic change influences the cost and benefits of childbearing. So fertility transition can occur gradually through social economic development and couple decision making, or through carefully controlled government intervention. Shifts in age distribution, the last stage of the demographic transition. The examples of progress in fertility, mortality, and growth rates over the demographic change are broadly known and perceived. Less surely new are the methodical changes in age dissemination that are an essential piece of the segment progress and that proceed with long after different rates have settled in the first transition phase, when mortality begins to decline while fertility remains high at the youngest ages, causing an increase in the proportion of children in the population and raising child dependency ratios, as shown in Panel E, thus resulting its populations younger rather than older that can last for 70 years. Both families and governments may struggle to achieve educational goals for the unexpectedly high number of children. So importance of age distribution, it determines the birth and death rates. The age structure of a population will determine the rate of the birth and death. Example, when the population of old people is higher than that of the other group, it means that the death rate is going to be higher. The transition in age distribution by current development category. Remember that even in 1950, the least developed countries had higher fertility and higher mortality than the less developed countries, and change since then has been slower for them. The least developed countries moved slowly out of the phase of rising youth dependency and entered the bonus phase around 1990. For these countries, the total dependency ratio is projected to fall sharply from 2000 to 2050. They already have the median age that the less developed countries are projected to achieve by 2050, at which time the median age in the more developed countries will have risen another 8 years to 45.2 years. The total dependency ratio in the more developed countries is projected to rise sharply over the next 50 years as their low fertility increasingly affects the labor force size and the baby boom. lower fertility or longer life expectancy. Both low fertility and longer life contribute to the aging of the population, but the implications of these factors for causes of shifts in the population distribution and for how society might react for the aging of the population are rather different. When population aging is due to declining fertility, it raises the share of the elderly population without altering the remaining life expectancy of older individuals. The desire to have fewer children may be related to the rise of public sector pensions, which disconnect old age support from individual fertility, and may have played some role in causing low fertility in industrial nations. While lower fertility may go with reduced total parental expenditures on children, it also raises the ratio of elderly to working age people, other things equal, with no corresponding improvement in health to facilitate a prolongation of working years. A low fertility rate with a maximum of 2 children per woman leads to a long life expectancy is counterintuitive or reasonable because it depends on how the person lives his or her life, either in a healthy way or not.